The Dark Pictures Switchback VR looks to do for Supermassive's anthology horror game series exactly what Rush of Blood did for Until Dawn. Here's a VR exclusive rollercoaster ride of a rail shooter that takes plenty of inspiration from Supermassive's more traditional narrative horror games to create and provide the fodder that you get to shoot at as you play. But can it be more than a fun VR aside? Well, with the game coming out later this week on the 16th of March, we were able to visit Supermassive Games and try out 2 levels ahead of time. Our thanks to them for having and letting us use their excellent recording setup for capturing all of the footage that you're seeing in the background. And so let's dive into one of the main things that Switchback VR is really pioneering as an avenue that more VR games could explore going forwards, and that is the eye tracking built into every PSVR 2 headset. We've seen this used in other launch window games for things like just menu selections or foveated rendering, giving gentle hints for what's interactive in a game world and what isn't, and before your eyes with its blink tracking for the progression through that game's story. Switchback VR takes this technology and it puts it to a far more devious use. In the literal blink of an eye, the scene in front of you can transform. Mannequin enemies can shift around, getting closer, moving like it's a playground game of What's the Time, Mr. Wolf, as they get closer and closer to you. In the footage here, you don't get to see the flashes of blackness as my eyes close, but that's what I'm perceiving as the enemies switch quickly from one spot to another. It is every bit the Doctor Who homage that it sounds like, but played in a slightly more campy, pantomime kind of way. Later on in the levels that we got to try out, there's the bona fide eye tracking, as broken mannequins move slowly towards you whenever you're not looking directly at them to fix them in place. The game knows exactly where I'm looking, and so it's just this smidgen creepier to see things moving towards you, but only in your periphery. And this is an absolutely fascinating avenue for VR games to keep on exploring, adding even more potential nuance to how games can be scripted around what you're looking at. Given how easy it can be for you to just be looking in completely the wrong direction when someone's talking to you or when they're trying to show you something in the game, video games in VR could start to ensure that you don't miss out on the big flashy explosion that someone spent hours upon hours putting together. The eye tracking is possibly going to be one of Switchback VR's biggest tricks, but it's there to augment a fun and twisty rollercoaster shooter, and also the game has had to be designed so that eye tracking can be avoided and disabled. It's an accessibility feature to not have this in the game as well. The game will take you through 10 levels, inspired in large part by the first 4 games in the Dark Pictures Anthology series. So it could be that you're going through a haunted ship in one level or a spooky hotel in another. Each one is going to be around about 15 to 20 minutes long, Supermassive tell us, and from the 2 that we got to play early on, they've done a pretty good job of keeping things nice and fresh. The pacing shifts and changes, you go from fast to slow, from peaks of action to valleys of building tension, throwing in more standard ideas as well, like having to duck and weave around objects, and if you don't, then you get buzzed in the forehead by the PSVR 2 motor. At various points, they'll also lean on classic roller coaster suspense building as well, as it might ratchet you up a slope and then throw you down an incline on the other side at much higher speeds. Outside of occasionally being able to spot and shoot little arrows that will switch tracks, each level has got at least one split path within it, your movement through the levels is completely out of your control. These are linear levels that you experience. But for the lack of control over the direction that you take, you are truly empowered by having a gun in each hand, most of the time. Now, I don't know about you, but having a gun in each hand does take away a lot of the scare factor of the game, not to mention having infinite ammunition for the standard pistols. So, Switchback will whip the guns away from you at various points, leaving you feeling helpless and without the guns to face a scare or two. All that you've got then is just a pair of floating hands in VR, and yes, you can make finger guns with the sense controller's finger detection, but that's not going to really help you against some of the nasties that you're facing. When it's actually time for the enemies to start coming at you again though, well, you've got those guns back in hand and you'll always be able to fight back. You can even punch enemies if they get a bit too close to you. It's not just the spooky enemies that you'll have to deal with when you're cruising through the stages though. You'll always be on the lookout for the marked objects that give you bonus points for the high score leaderboards. But every destructible object will give you points towards this, so you'll be constantly blasting away and then either tapping a button or shaking your hand quickly to reload. I do kind of wish that there was a more involved reloading option, but can also appreciate Supermassive wanting to keep this game feeling light and accessible. So the only time that I really stopped and thought about what I was doing with my guns was when I had a special weapon. These are found from shooting marked crates, and they could hand you an Uzi, shotgun, revolver, that kind of thing, one per hand. These have got limited ammunition and reloads, so you'll want to try and be a touch more accurate with them, and then also reload only when a clip runs dry. You can keep tabs of how much ammunition you've still got by quickly taking a glance at your wrist. But it's also a classic video game horror thing where you'll know that something bad is just around the corner and waiting for you if the game gives you these special weapons. As I've already said, there's a somewhat campy tone in places to Switchback VR. One fight with the boss saw her going in and out of doorways like a kind of Scooby-Doo villain, I felt, all the while using her telekinesis to bombard me with barrels of crates that I had to then shoot down. Then there's some of the enemy design, such as the aforementioned mannequins, who will stiffly flail at you when they manage to get close enough. It did get me with a handful of jump scares, but what I'm going to say about Switchback VR is that it might be horror themed, but I was laughing and always looking forward to the next thing that Supermassive would throw my way, rather than cowering in my seat. I was just having a lot of fun as I was blasting my way through this game, and aside from the high-G loop-the-loops that you'd expect from a real-world roller coaster, fun is exactly what you want, and that's exactly what you're going to get here. The Dark Pictures Switchback VR is out later this week on Thursday, 16th of March, and is exclusively on PlayStation VR 2. Keep an eye out for our review over on the 6thAxis.com as we get closer to that date. But that's all that we've got for this particular video, and I hope that you've enjoyed what you've seen. If you have, then make sure to click the like button, subscribe, the usual YouTube things, and hopefully we will see you again soon. Goodbye! Oh, I don't like the look of this. Oh, I don't have my guns anymore. High five. You've got quite a creepy face.